Welcome to this week's edition of the Construction CPA's Coffee Cafe. I am the Construction CPA, Lisa Raish. We are dropping the hammer on cash flow problems so you can build things that matter. This week's topic is going to be avoiding the trap of overbilling and underbilling, right? So this is definitely going to feed directly into your cash flow, whether you have challenges or not. It's definitely going to be an indication of kind of where your cash flow is going to be ebbing and flowing. So as always, with this topic, we're going to be talking about, you're going to walk away with 3 or 4 real actionable tips that you can implement in your business starting today or even tomorrow. So here we go. So first, kind of let's talk a little bit about over and under billing, right? So have you ever gotten to the end of a project and you've been like, this is not what I thought we would have billed for. I thought we would build more, or those are the kinds of things that give you that are the challenge with the over and under billing. I thought I had more to bill, or I had that much left to bill. That's where it can really get kind of dangerous for you, and you have to be mindful of what you're doing when you're billing your clients. You don't want to overbill and you don't want to underbill, right? So kind of let's talk a little bit more about like why it really matters. Why does overbilling and underbilling matter in your business? Because if you bill more than the work that was completed, right, then you're going to have that cash come in early. So you're going to have short-term cash boosts. You're going to have cash on the front side, but on the back side, when you're trying to finish the project, when you still have expenses coming in, you're scrambling to actually pay those expenses because you've collected all your cash on the front end. Now, on the opposite side, with the underbilling, you're pretty much doing work and maybe more work than you really should before you've billed, right? So you're going to create a different type of cash gap. That's more of a cash gap on the front side of the project. So you still have dollars going out the door on the front side of a project, but you're waiting to collect it on the back end, right? So regardless of whether you are over or underbilling, the reality is that you are distorting your financial statements. You are hurting your cash flow, whether there's too much on the front side or the back side. And you're ultimately, in many cases, for those of you that do require bonding, you may have challenges getting bonding, or problems with the bonding companies or even the banks when they are attempting to finance you for certain projects, right? Because they see those big gaps in the over and the under billing. Because again, those are things that you're going to share with you share your WIP schedule with the bonding company as well as the banks when you are looking for financing. So again, they don't want to see those big ebbs and flows either, because then they know it's going to create a challenge on your side. So let's talk about what you can do. What are the 3 things that you can actually do? Or we've got 4 things this week. So what are the 4 things that you can actually do to improve your over and under billing? Okay, so the first one is you want to make sure that you are reconciling the work that you're doing versus the billings that you're doing, right? So you need to compare your percentage of work complete versus what percent that you've billed. Again, if you have completed 75% and you've only billed 50%, or vice versa, you've completed 75%, but you've billed out 95%, you're going to have a gap there on either side of it. So you need to identify ahead of time where you're going to have that over and under billing and get ahead of it, right? So you need to make those regular reconciliations. Maybe you do notice that you're off right now. So now the next billing, maybe if you have underbilled, maybe you need to do a billing right away in order to get caught up. Or you may realize that I've got to wait a little while before I can do one more billing because I've just overbilled too far in advance. So again, you want to reconcile in advance, and it's going to help you prevent surprises at the end of the day. There's nothing worse than finding out when you get to close to the close of a project that you don't have anything left to bill, especially if there is an expectation of cash that you're going to need to finish paying expenses on that project. So tip number 2, you have to use a clear job costing system. Whatever it is that works for you, it has to be a system that you utilize and you track and you manage on a regular basis. So if it is still living in a spreadsheet, you need to make sure that you're tracking your labor, your materials, your subs on every project and on every phase, and then against every line item, so that you can determine whether or not you have certain parts of a project that might be over or under billed, right? Because that's another thing that you need to look at as well. So does it live on a spreadsheet? And that's fine that if it does. If it doesn't, if it lives in a software, many of our clients are using software products. There are tons of them out there. Make sure you are utilizing the product to its capacity, tracking all of your expenses that are on those projects. And again, matching them up against the budgeted line items that you have so that you can see how far you are into a project to determine how complete it is and how far out that you can bill. You need to make sure you tie those actual costs to the progress bill. Again, not, oh, we're 75% in, but we've billed out 95%. Again, that's not tying it. You should really be, if you're at 75%, you should be ready to bill out at 75%, not at 50% or 95%. So accurate job costing is foundational to over and under billing. And as with anything else, is going to be foundational to your cash flow, right? So you've got to keep your billings aligned with reality. If you have billed out 50% of the job and you've only done 5%, you have created a problem and you've got to make sure that you fix that. You got to get those over and under billings to match up, especially when you're looking at your overall expenses you've incurred on a project. So, tip 3, you have to make sure you train your PMs, your project managers, your superintendents, your supervisors, whatever you want to call them, those that are actually managing the day to day of the project on what your billing practices are so that they are aligned, so that they understand that, hey, we are at a specific percent complete. The finance team needs to know that so they can bill out, right? So they're the ones on the front lines. They're the ones who are there every day. They see how far the project has actually progressed. So you want to make sure you teach them and get them to understand how far they've progressed on that project ties back to how and when you're going to bill people, right? So they need to help you with the billing in the sense of they're not doing the billing, but they help you with, submitting any adjustments. Are there updates to the billing? Are we farther along than we thought we were? So again, there's a real alignment, and it's actually incredibly helpful to have your PMs truly become part of the billing process so that you really do tie those expenses to that billing. So you're minimizing that over and under billing that you've got going out. And so you don't want the PMs to think finance is so foreign and vice versa. There needs to be a really good interaction between the two to ensure the projects are billed out appropriately. And then on the other side of it, you as a PM would want to make sure that finance is paying bills related to your projects in a timely fashion because you want to maintain a good relationship with your vendors, your subs, and so on. So again, there needs to be a happy medium. We don't want to see one go to the extreme or the other, right? Seriously overbilled and seriously underbilled, right? So tip number 4, make sure that you are always communicating not only with your clients, but if you have lenders with regard to your over and your underbilling, you need to make sure you are transparent with this, right? You need to make sure everyone's on the same page. We talk a lot about communication on here. It's not just communication internally in your business. It is with your customer. Where are you in these projects? What else do they want to change or are they revising, right? If there's billing discrepancies, if you have a good solid relationship, you can easily explain that, discrepancy early enough with a client where, if there is not as much transparency in a relationship, you have that challenge where you make an error on a bill, like, oh, we did overbill or, an error. At least now you can go back and say to them, we made an error, we've got a revision. Or again, they can come to you and say, hey, we want to do these changes. So we want to have change orders. You've signed off on the change orders. You're going to bill on the change orders, right? There's just is clarity. Everyone knows kind of who's on first, who's doing what on what sides of the relationship and what is expected of the other. So again, it just goes back to core foundational communication, not just internally in your business, but with your clients and in some cases with your bank. For those of you that have financing, especially the financing that's tied to, in many cases, tied to your WIP schedules. So your bonding company, your bank, they want to feel confident in the relationship that you have with them. The bank wants to feel comfortable that you're going to repay them the money that you've borrowed. So again, keeping clear lines of communication with them And also being very clear on your over and under billings, minimizing those. They won't see any like they won't see any discrepancies themselves, and therefore feel challenged. Like, oh, maybe we don't want to let them borrow any more money again because we're seeing some discrepancies in their financial statements. They might be running into a challenge. We don't know if we can let them borrow any more money, right? That ultimately will affect your cash flow as well. So you want to maintain that good, strong relationship, not only with your customer, but with your banks and any of the bonding companies that you might be using, which are providing you bonding on each of the individual projects that you're working on. So again, open communication, it just prevents disputes, it protects the relationship, and in some cases, it might be, for example, if it's a client relationship, it could be a relationship where you're doing more work for that person. So again, and you don't want to have any disputes, especially if you may in fact have more additional work lined up. You want to have clear communication across the board so that you can in fact continue to take on all of those different projects. So, you want to make sure you're staying balanced in your billing, because it isn't just about the cash, right? It's building trust, it's building financial stability. It's not just dollars in, dollars out. Am I making payroll on Friday? It's, will the bank finance that next project that we're going to do, right? So it's not just about kind of the dollars in the bank today. It's about your relationships and managing those relationships moving forward. So I just have a question. Does your company tend to lean towards maybe overbilling or underbilling? I would absolutely love to hear what you have to say about that. As always, we look forward to seeing you here every Friday. Follow us here on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We are at the Construction CPA at all of the above. I look forward to seeing you here every week, and we'll see you next week.